You don't realize what you're really stepping on.
We try to watch out for them because we know they're there.
Shells and seaweed, what people visiting Loudermilk Beach in Naples expect to see wash up in the waves. But recently, something more painful is rolling in with every wave.
It's just really between the water and the sand.
They're not wasps, they're nice honeybees.
Bees aren't buzzing around the park's sticky trash cans or concession stand. Instead, they're squirming around or laying lifeless on the sand. The city of Naples says crews are investigating the problem and will have staff out at the beach Tuesday working to get to the bottom of visitors' questions.
Why are there bees? Where are they coming from? And why are they in a very specific area in the beach?
Bolivia is under a state of emergency after a vast agricultural area of around 1,000 hectares was laid to ruin by a plague of locusts. The locusts first appeared about 1 week ago in an area near Santa Cruz. The government has released €655,000 in extra funding for fumigation.
An invasive caterpillar species is spreading across Africa and devastating crops. The fall armyworm, native to North and South America, appeared in Africa for the first time last year. Scientists say it likely arrived on commercial airliners. Non-native armyworms are now spreading rapidly. They've already been confirmed in countries across southern and western Africa. They pose a major threat to agriculture. Maize, an important staple across much of Africa, is especially vulnerable. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says fall armyworms have destroyed up to 73% of crops in some areas. Fall armyworms are also difficult to control using pesticides. In a statement released Monday, February 6th, the Center for Agriculture and Biosciences International said the caterpillar could, quote, spread to tropical Asia and the Mediterranean in the next few years. The center points out that this would be a major threat to agriculture worldwide.
In drought-hit Guatemala, those taking a swing at farming are coming up empty. The little that grows here is simply not enough, and it's worrying World Food Program officials like Gustavo Alas. They have had losses from 80 to 85% of their basic grain, he says, which is the main crop here, so they do not have the necessary food in the season where they build up their stock. 3 consecutive years of El Niño-linked drought have exacerbated poverty and hunger in the country of 15 million. The World Food Program, or WFP, says the European Union will invest $4.2 million to support families most affected by droughts, including subsistence farmers like those here in Guatemala. The investment aims to improve land productivity and food security, though WFP recognizes despite the intervention, 5 to 10% of farmers and their families will resort to immigration.
There's a vegetable shortage rolling across parts of northern Europe, making it harder for shoppers to get their hands on fresh produce. Veggies like spinach and zucchini started vanishing from grocery store shelves across Great Britain in early January. 4 of Britain's biggest grocery chains have even started to ration iceberg lettuce. Meanwhile, broccoli, cauliflower, eggplant, peppers, and cabbage are in short supply in Denmark, France, and the Netherlands. Bad weather in a corner of Spain that supplies much of Europe in the colder months is largely to blame for the shortage. In Germany, the price of fresh vegetables jumped more than 18% in December. The UK grocery chain Sainsbury's is charging around $1.75 per head of lettuce, more than 3 times the price in pre-shortage days. In a scramble for substitutes, the BBC recently published a guide on how to cope, encouraging shoppers to switch to kale. But Britons are still craving lettuce on their burgers and salads. Says a spokesman for the British Leafy Salads Association, salad leaves are the sexiest they've ever been.
Efforts to prevent movement of all livestock and farm vehicles across the nation following this year's first outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease was apparently not very effective. The virus had been reported near the capital. Though authorities promptly slaughtered the infected cows, there are lingering fears of the virus spreading.
A suspected case of foot-and-mouth disease was reported on Wednesday at a dairy farm not far from Seoul. The farm in Yeoncheon County, Gyeonggi-do Province, located some 60 kilometers north of the capital, reported that 10 cows showed symptoms of the disease. The local government confirmed that 3 of them have tested positive for the virus and said all 100 of the farm's milk cows will be slaughtered immediately. Furthermore, the quarantine authorities have ordered a movement ban on all animals within 3 kilometers of the site, and the regional government plans to vaccinate all cows being raised in the province by end of this week. The authorities are on alert because of the apparent rapid spread of the virus. It's already made it to the capital area since the year's first outbreak was confirmed on Monday.
According to a recent report, scientists fear that spillback of the Zika virus into monkeys in South America may raise the risk of future human outbreaks. In areas where Zika outbreaks have been most prevalent among humans and mosquitoes, the virus may be transmitted to wild primates. Barbara Hahn, a disease ecologist at the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies, said that if the disease becomes established in monkeys or other wild primates, the animals may serve as reservoirs for potential future outbreaks. This would make it nearly impossible to eliminate the virus. Findings have shown that monkeys in Brazil have already been found carrying Zika virus, which matches the human strain, showing that spillback has already started.
Iran has launched another missile from the launch pad where it conducted a ballistic missile test late last month. This is also the pad where Fox first reported exclusive satellite photos indicated another rocket was poised to put a satellite into space. Later, Iran took that rocket off the launcher. The reason Iran scrubbed that launch is not known. The missile that was fired just 11 hours ago is not a ballistic missile, but a short-range surface-to-air missile. We are told it impacted 35 miles away. All this amid a simmering war of words between President Trump and Iran's supreme leader.
The war of words is escalating between Iran and the White House. Iran's supreme leader mocking President Trump for the rocky rollout of the controversial travel ban, calling him Mr. Newcomer.
We're thankful for this person who has arrived. Our thanks is for making our lives easy as he has shown the real face of America. Now this man who has just arrived says that you must be thankful to America and the Obama administration. He says we must thank one person while also being afraid. No, we will not fear you.
Iran has received the last batch of the 149-ton shipment of uranium from Russia. A total of 31 metric tons of concentrated uranium, also known as yellow cake, arrived in the Iranian city of Isfahan. The deliveries were authorized by all the parties to the Iranian nuclear deal and were carried out in 4 stages. The first of the 4 consignments was flown to Iran on January 26th. Iran's nuclear chief, Ali Akbar Salehi, says yellow cake is very important for nuclear power plants. Iran has imported 359 metric tons of concentrated uranium, also known as yellow cake, since the implementation of the nuclear deal. Tehran and the P5+1 group of countries reached the landmark agreement in 2015.
Turning to the Muslim Brotherhood, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, that would be quite some step on the part of this administration for the first time for the United States to designate both as terrorist organizations.
Look, the Revolutionary Guards from Iran should have been put on the terrorist list decades ago. They are the tip of the spear of the Islamic Revolution of 1979. They are the vehicle that funds and arms many terrorist groups, including Hamas and Hezbollah. They're the people who put together explosively formed projectiles that were used against American troops in Iraq when we still had substantial forces there. And I think it would be a crippling move against the Revolutionary Guard, so I'm delighted at that. The Muslim Brotherhood, as you pointed out, a number of Muslim countries already describe them as terrorists. They are the front group, the smiling face of terrorism in Western Europe and the United States. So if these designations happen, it's both of them very significant steps.
Israel says it has come under a rocket attack from Egypt. The Israeli military says several rockets were fired at the town of Eilat from Egypt's Sinai Peninsula late Wednesday. It also claims some of the rockets were intercepted while one of them landed outside the town. No casualties have been reported following the rocket attack.
There's been increasing friction between Islamic State-affiliated terrorists operating in the Sinai on Egyptian territory and Hamas in Gaza. The source of the animosity, in part, is likely caused by an increasing number of operatives who have been defecting from Hamas to join the nearby ISIS group.
Many Hamas experts on building roadside bombs and the operation of anti-tank missiles instead used their training to help the ISIS branch called Sinai Province in battle against the Egyptian army. Some of the Palestinians even relocated to the Sinai with their entire families and are now said to serve as conduits for communication with the Gaza-based terrorists. Others have been killed in the violence in the Sinai, while those who try to return to Gaza are often arrested. One such 20-year-old commando was particularly aggravating to the Islamist Hamas rulers because he defected from their elite naval unit. The Sinai province reportedly retaliated for the arrests of its operatives by cutting back on the flow of goods it illegally smuggles into Gaza. After their release, relations between the two radical jihadi organizations is said to have improved. Despite suffering the loss of manpower, Hamas remains very dependent on contraband, such as weapons, being snuck in from the Sinai.
U.S.-backed forces are reporting progress against ISIS, but in Syria, a lot of new weapons are headed to the battlefield. Pentagon producer Lucas Tomlinson tells us where they're coming from and what impact they will have on the 21st century's bloodiest conflict.
In a dramatic escalation, Fox News has learned Russia sent the largest shipment of missiles to date to Syria, a month after Russian President Vladimir Putin pledged to scale back his forces there. The White House didn't deny the report.
We don't have any comment on this at the time.
This comes as Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, in a rare interview, signaled he is hoping for improved relations with the U.S. under President Trump.
We have to wait. It's still early to expect anything practical. It could be about the cooperation between the U.S. and Russia, that we think is going to be positive for the rest of the world, including Syria.
U.S. officials tell Fox in the past 2 days, Russia delivered 50 short-range ballistic missiles to the Syrian port of Tartus along the Mediterranean. Russian SS-21 missiles are called Scarabs by NATO, meant to destroy ground targets up to 100 miles away. Russia also recently fired 6 ballistic missiles from its airbase in Syria against opposition fighters. It is not immediately clear if those opposition fighters were backed by the United States. Russia also completed delivery of its S-300 missile components to Iran, according to Russia's envoy to the Islamic Republic. U.S. officials say Russia still maintains nearly 50 jets, helicopter gunships, and drones in Syria. Meanwhile, the ISIS headquarters in the war-torn country could be surrounded very soon.
Raqqa is a city that the enemy uses for external operations, so what we would expect is that within the next few weeks the city will be nearly completely isolated, and then there will be a decision point to move in.
This comes as the top U.S. commander in Iraq tells the Associated Press he expects the ISIS strongholds of Raqqa and Mosul to fall in 6 months. Previously, the Pentagon had not offered a timeline.
Elsewhere, U.S. President Donald Trump and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan have explored ways of cooperation in the fight against Daesh in Syria. In a phone call, Trump and Erdogan agreed to act together regarding the Daesh-controlled Syrian towns of Al-Bab and Raqqa. The two leaders also discussed issues including a safe zone in Syria, the refugee crisis, and the fight against terror as well. Reports say Erdogan called on the U.S. not to support the Syrian Kurdish YPG militia. Turkish sources say that CIA Director Mike Pompeo is to visit Turkey on Thursday to discuss the YPG.
Trump thanked President Xi for congratulating him after his November election win and wished the people of China a very happy Lantern Festival. The White House says the letter also expresses Trump's willingness to work with President Xi to foster ties that benefit both sides.
China-U.S. relations have overcome all kinds of difficulties and have moved forward continuously. Right now, our two countries are committed to this new model of major country relations. Today, the two countries' engagement is very close, and our interests are also closely intertwined. That is to say that any sensible politician will clearly recognize that if China and the U.S. are in conflict, both will lose, and both sides cannot afford that.
In their largest ever joint military drill next month, South Korea and the United States are planning to hold an exercise assuming the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD on the Korean peninsula. Military sources say the exercise will be aimed at repeating the process of detecting and shooting down North Korean intercontinental ballistic missiles, so the allies are capable of taking down an ICBM in a real-life scenario. Since that is yet to be deployed, it will be a computer-based simulation. In this year's Key Resolve and Foley Eagle exercises, the two sides will also incorporate a new feature called the 4D Deterrence Strategy, which will simulate preemptive strike operations against North Korea.
The State Department has updated its travel warning for North Korea, urging Americans to avoid all travel due to serious risk of arrest and long-term detention under North Korea's system of law enforcement. The travel warning comes amid ongoing calls for a complete travel ban on North Korea, based on the idea it could cut off revenue for the regime's state-owned airline Air Goryeo and affect the regime as a whole.
Brazil sends 200 troops to the state of Espírito Santo in order to quell a wave of violence that began after military police went on strike. As many as 50 people have died in the rampant crime wave that began on Friday, February 3rd, when the military police went on strike. Scenes of looting, arson, and other crimes have been caught on camera, mostly in the state capital of Vitória. Unions say military police are striking over wages. They note that military police officers have not received a single pay raise in the past 3 years. Brazil is currently in one of the worst recessions in its history. Espírito Santo, like many other states in Brazil, has a massive amount of debt. That debt has led to budget deficits, which have led to cuts in jobs and salaries. On Monday, February 6th, President Michel Temer ordered 200 federal troops to the state to restore law and order.
ROTC may soon be mandatory once more for students in the Philippines. On February 7th, President Rodrigo Duterte approved a plan to revive the mandatory Reserve Officers Training Course for 12th and 11th grade students nationwide. If approved, the proposal will amend the Citizen Armed Forces of the Philippines Reservist Act. Agriculture Secretary Emmanuel Piñol quoted Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana as saying ROTC instills patriotism, love of country, moral and spiritual values, respect for human rights, and adherence to the Constitution. But student activist groups aren't on board. The National Union of Students of the Philippines and the League of Filipino Students say ROTC, quote, seeks to perpetuate a culture of blind obedience and instills fear. Mandatory ROTC was abolished 16 years ago following the death of student Mark Wilson Chua. He was killed after exposing alleged corruption in his ROTC unit at the University of Santo Tomas. Since then, ROTC has been an optional course.
President Trump's travel ban has sparked protests in the U.S., but a new poll finds that Europeans may support such an idea, perhaps even more than Americans. London-based think tank Chatham House did the survey. The poll was conducted before the ban was announced. Chatham House talked to over 10,000 people from 10 European countries. The question was, do you agree with the statement all further migration from mainly Muslim countries should be stopped? Overall, 55% agreed and only 20% disagreed. Support was weaker among women, young people, the educated, and urban residents. But even among those groups, support significantly outweighed opposition. Fear of crime and terrorism has sparked a right-wing European backlash against immigration. By contrast, a recent Quinnipiac University poll found that only 46% of Americans support Trump's 7-country travel ban. 51% are opposed.
Nieto met the group of 135 deportees at Mexico City's International Airport, where he pledged solidarity and government support.
You are not alone. Let the government assist you in this process of returning to your country. Some of you have been abroad for many years, others less, but don't feel abandoned.
According to Pew Research Center in the U.S., more than 16 million Mexicans have migrated to the United States over the past 50 years. Many now face an uncertain future.
Where Uber's going, they don't need roads. The ride-hailing company has hired 30-year NASA veteran engineer Mark Moore to help take Uber to new heights with flying cars. Moore will serve as Uber's Director of Aviation, departing from NASA 1 year away from retirement, leaving a significant pension and health care for life on the table. Uber outlines its futuristic plans in a white paper, in which it lays out a vision of customers taking conventional Ubers from their homes to nearby vertiports in nearby residential neighborhoods. Passengers would then board an electric-powered aircraft and be flown to a vertiport closest to their destination. The air taxi, which would be operated by human pilots, at least at first, takes off and lands like a helicopter. Uber believes that on-demand aviation has the potential to radically improve urban mobility, giving people back time lost in their daily commutes. Though the flying car is not yet under construction, Moore predicts Uber will be airborne in the next 1 to 3 years.
A Belgian digital marketing and tech company called New Fusion has launched an initiative allowing employees to trade in their ID badges for a surgically implanted microchip. The chips, which are inserted between the owner's index finger and thumb, contain personal data and codes allowing access to the company's assets. For those bothered by becoming bionic, the chip can also be worn in a ring.
Well, if you're like me and don't have any plans on Friday night, sit back, relax, and enjoy quite the show up in the sky. There will be a lunar eclipse from 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time to about 9:50 p.m. If that's not enough, a comet will be visible at around 3 a.m. on Saturday. It will get within 7.4 million miles of Earth, making its closest approach yet. Oh, and there will also be a full moon, or more specifically, a snow moon. According to the Farmer's Almanac, it's called a snow moon because the heaviest snows usually fall in February.
We can't wait to be the change. It's not too late, free from hate. Think of the future that we could create.
I don't let that pull me now. To me, I'm the same as everybody else.